All right, today we are going to be discussing the long-term viability of these hyper small terrariums. This one is about 20 milliliters, and I first published a video on it about 6 months ago as a short. It was a little bit older than that at the time. I'd probably say it's about 7 months old. The first main problem is due to its extremely small size, it's hard to keep the springtails alive. The initial culture did eat the mold, so I haven't had that problem again. But once the mold was gone, it doesn't really get opened, so there was no spores or detritus for the springtails to eat, and they eventually died out. I tried adding a couple more subsequently, thinking, oh, well, I only put like 3 in there. Maybe they were all the same sex. No, they just can't make it in something this small. I also had, although they lasted a lot longer in my 35 milliliter terrarium, generally speaking, anytime I make one less than 50 milliliters, they eventually run out of food and die out. Another big problem is cleaning it. At this size, it's very difficult to clean because you can pretty much only clean it with a Q-tip. And those can tend to leave like thread and fibers and stuff behind. Almost every time I've attempted to clean it, due to the small size, the hardscape, those rocks, get pushed around a little bit. Additionally, the twigs that are in there are so tiny that they get hyper waterlogged really fast, even when it's not an overwatered system. So whenever I would take them out for cleaning, they'd be too, I don't know how to say this without, sex jokes, but they would be too soft, limp, flaccid, whatever you want to say, to note that they're waterlogged enough that they don't necessarily hold their shape anymore. When I do clean this with a Q-tip, I usually pre-dip it in some distilled water so that there's no residue and minimal threading left behind. I've seen some videos and pictures and stuff where people will take really small terrariums like this and put clippings of plants in it. I'm pretty sure those are all bullshit. I'd really love to see one of those, 6 to 12 months later, because just cleaning it is nightmarish. I would love to see how they actually maintain it. Additionally, in such a small scape, it's pretty easy for the moss to develop at inconsistent rates, between species. And as a result, one can quickly take over. The thread moss here has completely outcompeted the haircap moss. There was initially 3 species of moss in here. The third being silver green Briam moss in the back there. And I know it looks dead, but I do trim it once. How do I get a good... It's hard to really film and photograph glass on this small. It's hard to see it pretty well, but I have trimmed it a little bit with nose hair trimmers. Basically, silvery green Briam moss is a temperate moss species, and it kind of needs that dry out period. So it doesn't do too well in here. It stays pretty dormant. There is a period of time initially where there's a little bit too much water in. So it took about 2 months to actually get any growth out of the moss because it was too waterlogged. It never went anaerobic, but after the initial springtail culture died out, I left it open a little bit to dry some of the soil out, and that seemed to help. And, luckily I didn't get any mold in there. Those mold spores just exist in the air. When you have wood in your design, you're going to get that. So I would recommend for a really small terrarium like this to only use stone. Additionally, I put a drainage layer in there. On such a small scale, a lot of people will say that you don't need it. I kind of find the inverse to be true. The larger the terrarium, the less likely I need the drainage layer. Potentially, the lack of barrier between it might have caused some problems. But overall, like, I mean, as you can clearly see, the moss grows, I have to trim it. It does all right. There used to be some algae in there. However, after a few cleanings, it's finally kind of stopped. It stopped, like, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago or so. I'm not sure how much of that is just it, because, like, springtails will occasionally eat algae. I don't know how much of that is it finally getting outcompeted for nutrients and, like, I mean, let's just call it resources. Maybe it did finally get outcompeted for resources by the moss, or maybe, it died out for other reasons. I'm not entirely certain. What else did I learn? Yeah, no, I mean, that's about it. The hardest part of it is the patience and steady hands for doing it. It's not too hard for beginners, but I would recommend that if you're going to do something this, just for scale, here's my thumb. If you're going to do something this small, I strongly recommend that you have some experience beforehand, but they're entirely possible, I have another one of these bottles cleared out that I plan on making another one out of. My 35 milliliter bottle is still doing pretty strong too. Additionally, I don't want to open it up. This lid here, it's all plastic, but I still seem to have some discoloration on the inside. That's usually something that happens when there's like metal in it. So with some of the metal lids, I would recommend covering it, whether it be with saran wrap, wax, something like that. Generally speaking, though, these aren't nearly as hard as they look, but they're harder than they should be. So, yeah, not really a standard video for me. Just wanted to give some updates on it. Also, it's my only video that's ever done well, so I figured I'd try it again. Yeah. Best of luck. Later.